Hello, hopefully you can all hear me. We're here with apologies and a cat. So if you like cats, you're in the right place. Unfortunately, we've been having some issues with the stream, which so I've reverted to an old bit of streaming software, which seems to be okay at the minute. But please let us know in the chat whether that's coming through for people. Hopefully everyone that was on the stream before will have come back and joined us on this, so we'll give it a few minutes for people to get in the room. So yes, right, I'm back. So thank you to everyone for joining us this evening, and yes, as for those who haven't been here before, my name's Stuart McGoo, and this is Talk to Stu, where I will hopefully be answering your questions related to benefits, health and social care, any of those kind of things. I thought what I'd do this evening would be to normally I'd do a bit of a news segment, but there's not really much different in the news at the moment, so I'm going to start by going through some comments, some questions that I've had in comments on videos, just to give you guys time to put your questions to us in the chat. And yeah, so just a bit of housekeeping before I start. Obviously I'm joined this evening by the very lovely Becky, who will be moderating the chat, and also my brother Duke of Nuke is there as well. He is going to nuke any naughty comments that come up. So obviously the majority of people that join us here are very lovely people, and you're all looking for help and support, and we want to create a helpful, supportive environment. But if any comments do come up that are a little bit might be considered to certain groups of people as offensive, this is a broad church, so it's for everybody, then we might give you a warning, and if that then carries on, then we might kick you out. Mm-hmm. The majority of you, of course, are all lovely people, if not all of you. So I very much doubt that happens, and it is rare, but I have decided to start saying that at the start of these things so that no one's surprised. The other thing to bear in mind is sometimes the stream has automatic moderation on there, so sometimes if you write things in capital letters, sort of, that might get picked up, or if you use too many emojis, or if you try to post a link, it might pick that up and put you in a timeout sort of thing automatically. But those, hopefully I've adjusted those filters so it shouldn't be quite so sensitive this time. Anyway, that's all that business, so let's get into it. So just looking at the comments that I've had over the last few days. Obviously my last news update video was primarily about the bank account situation, so I expect we'll be talking about that to a certain extent, and yeah, getting into things. So a question I had 6 days ago from JJ was, when receiving PIP, can we get help with housing benefit and council tax? Well, housing benefit and council tax, you can get support with those. Primarily that's done through universal credit if you're of working age. However, if you're already on employment support allowance or some other system and haven't yet been migrated over to universal credit, then you might be able to apply for housing benefit and council tax. But with all these things, they are means tested, so it entirely depends on your income, what level of savings you have, and all that sort of thing. Question from Jules, voiceover. Hi Stuart, I have a question. Why is the fact that my grown children pay us rent not regarded when they apply for anything, but when I have to fill in any forms, I have to declare it. We're all disabled and on a very small income, so we all chip in to keep the house running, especially since the electricity went up to $245 a month. Is there anything I can do? The short answer to that is no. The reason that it's a bit of a irritating thing, so I have to agree with Jules on this one. It is very frustrating. So when it's always assumed when people applying for things that they will have housing costs involved. So it's sort of always assumed that if they're having to pay rent, that's disregarded from those things if they are living with somebody who is the householder who has the responsibility for the rent. So the householder will probably take on the council tax support and all of those things. And if they're providing a contribution to that, it won't be something that is set or contracted. So it's very difficult to be able to reference that. So if your children, for example, maybe they're working, on a, just as an example, a 0 hours contract, and 1 week they do 16 hours and the next week they do 23, and then the week after that they do 2, that will vary their income. And so more than likely they'll have a conversation with their parents and say, well, can I give you £100 less this month, or can I give you a bit more next month, and things. So things go up and down, and there usually isn't a contract with that person in any way, shape or form, where there is a legal contract between the householder and the landlord, whoever that is, even if it's a housing association. So when they're doing these assessments, they base it primarily on what is evidenced. And if something is in a contract and you can demonstrate certain rent payments going out each month, then that's something that can be proven. Equally, if you are in a position where you're trying to get extra income support, it is very frustrating, but the way these things are assessed are based on household income. So if you're receiving universal credit, housing benefit, council tax support, all of those things, it will be based on all of the money that's coming into the house. So quite often a person might qualify for employment support allowance, but their partner is working full-time and actually earns quite a high wage. So that takes them over the allowable amount in the means test as a household. So although they have entitlement to employment support allowance or universal credit and the out-of-work benefit of universal credit, it won't I've lost my way there. Yes, so if they're on universal credit, I've lost my way on that one. What was I saying? Yes, so yeah, if it's assessed on the household income. So a person might have entitlement to employment support allowance or universal credit with the out-of-work sickness benefit element of that, but because the earnings are so high, it won't come in. So yes, apologies there. Any questions come in so far?
We have loads of excellent questions,
okay,
quite a number
cool.
of them. So I am going to go up to the top and find the very first question. So John says, "Hi Stuart, my wife renewed her PIP, but it's already been at DWP for 14 months. Still no decision, but being paid still. What are your comments?"
So this one comes up quite a lot, and I have done an FAQ video, I think, on this. I might have, or I should do if I haven't yet. But yeah, so currently the length of time that people are having to wait for a PIP review on average is 18 months. Okay, Some people a little bit shorter, some people a little bit longer. So 14 months is no surprise. Now, previously, a while ago, a few years ago, when there weren't these length of waits, when a person was assessed, if they had their PIP award taken away, usually that would happen within a couple of months of when the award was due to run out anyway. So it might then be that they requested that money to be paid back. That doesn't work with that. It doesn't work that way with the new review system. So with the new review system, that money continues up until the decision is made, and then they don't expect you to pay any money back. So although it's very stressful to keep waiting and keep thinking, well, am I going to get one of those brown envelopes drop through my door? When am I going to have my face-to-face assessment? Am I going to have a face-to-face assessment? Will it be over the phone? All of those questions. And most of the answers to those questions, of course, are regional. So, if you live close to Birmingham, then you might have a face-to-face assessment. If you live closer, further down south, Worcestershire, Herefordshire, Cheltenham, that way you're more likely to have a telephone assessment. So you're just left hanging with those, and there's not really any answer to that other than to just try and put it out of your mind for as long as possible until that time comes. What we are finding with the review assessments as well is a significantly higher number of people are not having to go through the telephone or face-to-face assessment, and their reward is just continuing. But that very much depends on what type of condition they have, and whether there would be any possibility that that condition would either get worse or improve, because it's that conditional change, either improving or getting worse, that the idea behind PIP, not the reality of PIP, but the idea of PIP, that you are assessed every so often, it's supposed to pick up for the people who've got better and therefore don't need it anymore, but also for people who have got worse. So if people have a progressive condition or develop further health conditions, then they might move from the lower rate to the higher rate. In theory, that's how it's supposed to be. In practice, obviously, we all know that it works out quite differently. So just keep muddling on with that one for as long as possible, and more than likely you will get something come through in the next 3 or 4 months that will give you an indication if you are going to be having an assessment or not. So do keep a check on that. Keep a check on your bank account as well. It is always worth giving them a ring just to check if it's still in process. They won't tell you anything about it, but they will just say, oh, we're still waiting for a decision, and we'll let you know as soon as we do. They won't give you any idea of what time that will be, but it will carry on that way. Okay, so thank you for your question.
A very lovely comment from Caroline. How do we support the stream? Has she thought any more about PayPal? Just like us and watch us and put up with us and the dodgy tech.
Actually, this is a really good question. So it's brought me onto something which I was going to start out as my opening gambit for this evening, but obviously with the technical issues, I got distracted a little bit. So I'm trying to, from March onwards, I'm going to try and make this into a bit more of a career than it just being a voluntary thing. So what I'm going to be doing is starting to put up some little opinion polls on YouTube, just asking people what it is that they want and what would be of benefit to them, how the channel can grow and develop to better support you. So it's really great that you guys want to contribute, and that's something that I definitely would like to bring into that. Obviously, this is a non-profit situation, but I will be looking at different ways of bringing in an income so that we can support this channel and reach more people. So, a lot of that will be like, do you want to see things like you say, a PayPal donation thing? Would you prefer to see merch being sold? Would you want to see me linking in with other organisations to maybe promote products that were useful in some way? Obviously, with people being on low income and claiming benefits, there's generally a sort of thing like, I'm not going to be advertising Maseratis or, Dior perfume or something like that. That's not what I'm talking about. But things like, disability equipment, primarily I'm here to support people, with disabilities and things like that. Or maybe it'll be like some sort of 10% off scheme. So you'll start seeing these little polls coming up. So it'd be a really big help when they come out if people could just take 2 seconds, and they will just be like quick yes or no questions. And if you spot one there, just let me know what you think. Just be honest, If you think it's a bad idea, say no. If you like it, say yes. So you'll be seeing a few more of those throughout February and March. And we'll hopefully start developing things. And if I've got a bit more time and some more resources to put into this sort of stuff, then, I could expand the offer. Maybe I could do a Patreon thing and provide some sort of template forms and things like that people can use to template things, so people can use it for a letter, for an appeal, those kind of things. So let us know. So thank you for that question. And
been gifted £10 by Games Addict.
Wow, brilliant. Thank you, Games Addict. That is really kind. So we do have super thanks on YouTube set up, so people can make a little donation through that if they want. So
that was incredibly generous, and we don't expect people to do this, but it has been very gratefully noted. Thank you so much. We have got absolutely loads of questions, so do you mind if I fire away? Lovely, thank you. So we have John Hughes. Hello, nice to see
John,
you again.
Yes. I know what John's wanting.
I expect this is going to be a no. But does Stu have any updates regarding the transition payment on Universal Credit? I saw another report on RightsNet on Friday, I think. Thank you.
Okay, so this is great. John has been emailing me about this issue, and it is something that I do really want to talk about. But the problem is that I'm not finding, I'm still at this point where I'm not finding really concrete information about what the DWP are going to do, if anything. Now, and generally the impression that I'm getting is that they are going to drag their feet for as long as they possibly can on this particular issue, and they're also going to give out as little information as possible so that people don't know about it. If John, so he has access to RightsNet, so this is one of the reasons why I want to try and increase the income into the channel. RightsNet is a really useful resource for professionals like me, but it is quite expensive to sign up to. Normally a professional organisation like Age UK or the CAB, they will sign up to it and they can get sort of insider information which is very up to date and to the minute, but the cost of that is a few £100s a year, which is fine over the year, but so I don't have access to that at the moment. So John, if you do have access to any of these articles or anything, please screenshot them or copy them and copy and paste them and email them to me or whatever, and I will definitely go through them because I really do want to do a video about this. In brief, and I don't want to get anybody's hopes up with this just yet, but some people that were receiving employment support allowance and then were transitioned over to Universal Credit found that over a period of time they were actually on less money than they were on before, whereas the transitional payment is meant to protect that level of income for them. And a court case has been going on for quite a few number of years, and there was success in February 2023 for the people bringing the case against the DWP. And so the court said, you must now start paying back all of these people. Of course, it's not really clear, but it seems like people will have to apply for it themselves. But the criteria of whether you fit into this category or not, and how that is assessed so that you can know whether it does apply to you and whether it's worth chasing that up, very little of this information has come out into the public domain at the moment. So there are still organisations. So what I'm saying is basically I still don't really know a concrete enough thing to say this is what's happening, and I don't want people getting their hopes up. So I really appreciate John bringing this up, and I promise John, as soon as I've got some solid information about this, I will be putting out an update on it. Thank you.
We've had another 2 lovely gifts, but from Edward and Sarah, and from John Matchelor as well. But I really want to thank you ever so much, but I'm going to get back onto track with the questions because there are so many.
Yes, thank you so much for these lovely donations.
It's so kind, we really do appreciate it. N. Cosworth has commented, can anybody advise me please? I'm on full PIP and my wife of 17 years fully cares for me, but she's here in the UK on an LTR visa and is not allowed any benefits. Can she still be my PIP carer? Do you know about that at all, or would it be something you'd need to research?
No, I do know. So if a person has leave to remain, it's not the same as citizenship. So the access to benefits is very low. So I've supported people in this situation before where the problem is essentially it's the Home Office that holds these things up, because once a person has an indefinite leave to remain and then citizenship, I can't quite remember what the exact terms are, but once that's been completed, then you get the access to those benefits as you should do, and somebody can then be officially recognised as a carer either by applying for carers allowance or doing that through universal credit and getting the carers element in universal credit. The thing is a person as a carer can still be recognised in law as a carer, so it may be worth applying for carers allowance. You won't get any money until that person has been told that they have recourse to public benefits. Literally that statement, you now have recourse to public benefits. When the Home Office says that, you may then be able to get an income from it depending on the other income related factors to carers allowance for anybody who is normally a UK resident. But it's still worth getting that or applying for that, because you could get carers allowance entitlement. So in principle you have carers allowance, so it's just a legal way of being recognised as a carer for somebody. Even if you are even if you don't have that, you are still legally recognised as a carer if you are caring for somebody, even if it's only for a couple of hours. So most carers organisations will support you even if you're only doing 2 or 3 hours a week, sort of thing. In Worcestershire, for example, we have the Worcester Association of Carers. They're a fantastic organisation that will be able to advise you in detail on this. So as I often say with these things, do reach out to somebody to see if you can find more information. Now the CAB probably aren't going to be your best source of information on this, so if you just Google carers support and then the area that you live in as a search term, you should get something coming up to tell you if there's any carers organisations local to you. You'll also see a few national carers organisations come up, so they'll be able to talk to you about your situation and advise you in much more detail. Locally, like I say, in Worcestershire, our local authority has a carers card scheme, which is quite useful to set up because it works as an emergency thing. So if anything happens to your carer when they're out, somebody can step in. But if you can also get money off in certain areas. So it's worth checking with your local authority and with carers organisations local to you if there's any kind of scheme like that. Carers allowance, what that does is it recognises that you care for somebody for 30 hours a week or more. Okay, so that's part of the reason that you want to get the entitlement but not the award. sort of thing. So that's worth looking into. Okay, hopefully the takeaway from that is try and get in touch with a local carers organisation.
Okie dokie. We've got a query from Vanessa Yip. I've got a question on legacy benefits.
Okay.
If I just claim a means tested ESA and PIP, will I be exempt from migration policy straight away? Also, will I be protected from being moved from supported to a working group?
This is a tricky one. So essentially, transitional protection says that whatever group that you are in, when you transition, and you will transition, when you transition, that you should remain in the same group. And unless you have a reassessment due at the same time that the transition comes through, you should remain in the equivalent group within Universal Credit for the length of time that was specified after your initial assessment. So the problem with the way this is being looked at is, on paper, we can see that the government is saying that people that are in the support group should therefore be exempt from any work commitments when they move over onto Universal Credit. What we're finding, though, is there are people who just accidentally get moved into the wrong group. What a sorts of things. So excuse my sarcasm with that. But there are mistakes made. Whether that's intentional or not, that's not for us to say, despite my sarcasm. But it does mean that if you move over into Universal Credit, if you were in the support group for a set length of time and then you were going to be reviewed to see if you still remain in the support group, then that will happen at the time that it was due to happen. So if you've got 3 years and you get transition next year, then you'll have two can I have the mouse back? Sorry, I've just had a thing pop up on the screen. More technical difficulties. So that's fine. Sorry about that. So yeah, when you transition over, like I say, if that's happening next year and you've got a 3-year wait, then you'll move over onto Universal Credit, and then 2 years after you will have to go through the assessment thing again. If you are in the limited capability for work group, then you will go into so if you're in the work related activity group, you will go over into the limited capability for work group in Universal Credit, and then you will more than likely be asked to complete a claimant commitment, where you have to look at some way of upskilling yourself or engaging in activities that would help your recovery and help you get back into work and all of those things. And we know that almost since the autumn statement was announced, that we've seen people are getting much more sort of stressed with that by the DWP almost immediately, really. So it'll be not everybody, but in certain centres there's been an obvious kind of upswing in pressure on people that are in that group. But essentially, when the transition happens, whatever you are in, you should remain in that until the transition happens. If you've been put in the support group permanently, then you shouldn't have to change at all. You shouldn't be reviewed at all. You should remain in that group. However, mistakes are often made, so look out for that, and do be very quick to challenge anything and get support to do those challenges by going to the CAB or any other local organisations. If you have been awarded employment support allowance under special rules, then you'll be immediately in the support group. Special rules is about how long you've got left to live for people with terminal conditions. So again, you should be protected in that way through the transitional payment. So just anything that happens, just get down the CAB, or if you have a specific condition that is supported by a national charity, get in touch with that national charity as well.
Stu, just in the spirit of being very fair, I think John hadn't realised that we'd come back online, and his was the first question that you answered. So he's just popped the question back on. Thanks, Duke of Nuke. I'm just going to quickly address this one. It was about about John's wife sent the renewal for Pip, taking DWP 40 months to reply, but she's still getting paid. Do you remember what you stated about that?
Yes. So as I say, just in brief, waiting time is about 18 months.
Great.
The payment will continue up until the decision is made. If a decision is made that is that the award is taken away, they won't have to pay that back.
Fab.
But obviously, if that decision does happen and the award is taken away, please mandatory reconsideration and appeal. If you think that decision is wrong, challenge it straight away.
So I think this answers the next question from Ray Alden. I'd like to ask when I could reapply for PIP after recently failing by 1 point. So that would be straight away mandatory reconsideration. Is that correct? Do I win the prize?
You do.
Yay!
Yes. My Padawan.
Excellent.
So if you any time a decision is made that you don't agree with, you must disagree with that decision straight away and request mandatory reconsideration. When you request mandatory reconsideration, you must spell out, or it will do you a lot of favours to write it down, send it in by post, have it all recorded, send evidence, and say to them exactly why they got that wrong. So I have done a FAQs video on appeals, and also if you look at my PIP third video, it's done quite a while ago now, but it still applies. If you watch my third video in my how to apply for PIP series, if you look on my channel, that also gives you some tips on appeals and things. There's also some really fantastic things available from Disability Rights UK. I'll pop the link in the chat for that. They have a PIP guide which you can buy it for £7 if you want a hard copy of it, but it's also free to download as well, and that is really helpful and talks about how to do a mandatory reconsideration and to do an appeal. But you must do it straight away, because one of the things about PIP, which is very different to disability living allowance, is unless your conditions have worsened since you applied, if you accept that decision, if you don't challenge it within the time frame that they suggest, then you can't reapply for it. You will just get the same decision again, and that can be difficult. Obviously, the time frame that people are given, it's a month to request mandatory reconsideration, and that's quite a short period of time. But if something happens, like that's a genuine thing, like you're very poorly, or you're waiting for benefits advisor to sit down and go over your case, and that delays it a little bit, then those are considered to be good reasons why you were late doing that. But if it's gone past sort of 3 or 4 months and you've not got in touch with them in any way, shape or form, then that decision will stand. So you must challenge it straight away. Your answer to this may actually also link to Tracy Crawkin's question. I'm on ESA and PIP and want to move, but it's with a different council. Will I be forced to go on universal credit or not, please? Would that be addressed in your PIP video, or? Could you repeat the question?
Of course, yeah. I'm on ESA and PIP. I want to move, but when she moves, she'll be in a different council catchment area, different council. Will I be forced to go onto universal credit or not? Is it location based essentially, and does moving address to a different council affect?
Generally speaking, if you're receiving housing benefit and council tax support under ESA, and then you are still receiving ESA when you move to a different place and you haven't gone through the transition, then you would have to apply for housing benefit and council tax support when you got there. And then you would be told to transition after that. If you have moved over onto universal credit, but for some reason are still receiving housing benefit and council tax support separately, then when you moved, you would get that through universal credit.
Just very quickly, our lovely Edward Brown has said you've got up to 13 months to request a mandatory consideration.
The date will be, you have up to 13 months with good reason for not doing it within the 28 days that they specify on the letter. So, don't leave it 13 months, is what I'm saying. If you have a good reason why you didn't do it within the 28 days that they specify on the letter, then they'll accept that up to 13 months. After 13 months, even if you've got a really good reason, you could, for example, somebody could be in a coma kind of thing. So that might be a good reason why they can't reply within the 28 days. And if that runs for longer than, say, 13 months, and then they wake up and go, hang on a minute, first thing I need to do now I've woken up is my mandatory reconsideration. Sorry, I don't mean to make light of that, but if that's what they were to do, then they say, sorry, it's been 13 months. It's a bit like in law, there's a year and a day rule with murder. So if you and manslaughter. So if you hit somebody with your car and they died within a year and a day, then they would be, you would be responsible for that. If it was outside a year and a day, then you wouldn't be responsible for that. They would have been seen as that.
Seriously?
Seriously. That's part of the law with murder and manslaughter. Anyway,
I think we digress.
I'm digressing slightly, but
I'm
just saying that
questions.
Is how the legal where the legal definition sits around those things. So if you've got a good excuse, yes, it can go up to 13 months. But if you just leave it because you were, I was busy, I didn't care, that kind of thing, they will expect it within the 28 days.
Brian has popped in a bit of interesting information. Brian's just read the DWP Touch Base newsletter, and it quotes from a DWP minister that people who receive ESA and housing benefit are not going to get transferred to universal credit until 2028. Have you heard of this? Have you read it?
So that's not quite accurate in terms of what they are saying. Don't believe it. It might be that that's the case, but people that are on employment support allowance and in receipt of housing benefit, they won't be asked to transition in the next year or two. They are at the bottom of the list, but they must have transitioned by 2029. So the first couple of months of 2029 is the goal for everybody to have been transitioned over. So that's been being done in priority order. So the focus for this year is working tax credits. So they're trying to get everybody off working tax credits onto universal credit for this year. The fact that the minister has come out and said that might seem like a bit of a relief for people, but I am still aware of people that are being forced to transition who are getting ESA and housing benefit and council tax support. And it will also be a regional thing as well, because it depends on how the council housing benefit and council tax support is done in each region. So they'll be moving around local authorities to take that from local authorities and move it over, because local authorities and the DWP are really struggling with staffing at the moment, because who knew? People don't like screwing people over with benefits all the time. It gets them down a bit, so they tend to, the job retention and job satisfaction is not very good, so people tend to move on, and they've got a big problem with getting people on board. Maybe there might be a change of government and things like that might ease a bit, and employment retention will become better, and conditions at the DWP, if it's true what we've heard about how they are there, will improve. So those things will they may be up for change. So although they've said that, that's good, but don't take it as absolute read, because it might be that you find, well, actually I live quite close to London and they've already started moving me over, and then people who are up in further afield up in Newcastle are kind of going, oh yeah, well, we haven't heard anything about it, and they may not till 2028. So don't be surprised if you do get a letter come through the door saying you've got to transition. And when you get that letter, you must transition. Whenever it comes, you must transition within a couple of weeks of getting that letter. Pretty much phone them up the same day you get it to guarantee that you do not lose your transitional protection.
So, Stu, Dallas Knight has said, "Hi Stu, my brother bought his council house, but after 15 years and financial issues, is it possible to sell that back to the council and rent it again?"
It is, but it depends on the council, and you will be offered much lower than the market value. I wouldn't suggest whether that's a good or a bad idea, because I'm not a financial advisor. The other things to be aware of is if you had bought a property from the council and then you sold it back, even with it being sold probably 20% under market value back to the housing association, it might not be the council, it might be a specific housing association. You may still have capital tied up in that, and then if you are receiving universal credit or employment support allowance that are on a means tested thing, and then you get that capital, then that will affect your entitlement to those benefits as well. So it's something that you need to think very, very carefully about before you do that. Housing, generally speaking, is a good investment because apart from occasional dips, generally the investment goes up and up. Also, there are national home buying schemes as well, which work sort of similarly, but again, you are getting quite a lot less than the market value. If you were to sell it back to them, there would also be the assumption that you are going to move out. So you couldn't sell it back to them and have them then rent it to you. So if that's what you're thinking as well, that won't happen. You could only sell it to them if you were moving out and moving on. So yeah, that is tricky. Equally, if you're on universal credit, there is mortgage support with that, but it's not like it used to be, and basically it's a compound interest loan and it reduces the amount of universal credit that you get overall. So it's not something that I recommend generally, but yeah, so don't take my word for it on that particular one. You would need to speak to a financial advisor if possible to see whether that would be a good idea.
Everyone's circumstances will be different.
Everyone's circumstances are different.
So, seek professional advice and opinion that's specific to your particular situation. I've got a few of the questions coming through as a repeat, so I'm going to just ask this one very quickly. Is PIP going up to £724 in April? Do you know?
I don't know if it's exactly that amount. It's increasing by, what was the amount? Is it 8 point something percent or 6 point something percent? So at the moment, and it also depends on what rate you're on. But yes, if you, I'll pop a link in the thing at the end of this with it. Sorry, you can tell I'm getting brain fog as we're going. I haven't been well lately, so it's I won't go into the details with that, but yeah, it's getting late and my brain is starting to go.
I think this is an easy one. 25 weeks wait for PIP review. Does that sound right?
Wow.
Sadly.
yeah, that goes 25 weeks. How many months is that? So that's 12 months?
No, like 4 months, 4 weeks, 4 weeks approximately per month, aren't there? So
yeah.
4, 5 and a bit. Is that right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why we have Becky here.
No, I'm the worst.
So yeah. As I mentioned earlier, it could be a lot longer. 18 months is the average at the moment.
Lovely. Paul Graham, hi Stu, I'm claiming carer's allowance and looking to work part-time. When the benefits go in April, how much are we allowed to make a week or hour?
Let me have a look in the book on this one. So generally it's around the 120 mark, I'm just trying to see if I can find the exact thing. So it's also about the number of hours that you're working. So you must be caring for somebody for 30 hours a week or more. So if the number of hours that you were caring for somebody reduced, then that might affect your entitlement. The other thing as well is if your income goes up and down. So I mentioned like a 0 hours contract. You will have to update them every week, and because carers allowance is a bit of an older system, I think that's usually done by filling in a form. So it's submitting your weekly income to them to see if it goes up and down. And quite often I've seen people when they're around that £120 a week mark, just kind of one week they get carers allowance, the next week they don't, and it kind of goes up and down depending on the hours that they work. But if you give me a couple of moments, if I can carers allowance 56, there we go, right, 49, 53.
This book is really fantastic.
Yes, so previously, when this was written, it was £128 a week or less. Do not affect it. So I expect that will have gone up a little bit by now to probably around the 135 mark at the most.
Where can someone check that?
You can Google that, carers allowance.
Fabulous.
And again, if you go to Disability Rights UK, there are guides on there. This is where I get this massive handbook that I use here. I will be getting the updated version of this very soon, which will be an online one.
Just quickly, Brian, yes, please do email through that newsletter. Be interesting to read that. That would be great. Just very quickly before I go on to the next question, there's been a lot in the chat about cost of living payments and people who haven't received them. And we've had some lovely help from some of our wonderful commenters within the chat who also haven't had theirs, but say that it is in between a couple of dates. So it was between, the thing has scrolled
6th and the 16th.
Lovely, yes, thank you.
Yeah, so between the 6th and the 16th, but people that are getting working tax credits, they come in the later half of that window. So if you're getting working tax credits, then you're more likely to get that payment towards it. But it is based on whether you were receiving universal credit from the 12th week of the 12th of December. Let me just look at my calendar so I can get you the right week. So it's based on whether you were receiving an award for universal credit at that point. So
Duke of Nuke has kindly found a quote and has posted it in the
Excellent.
link. I believe he's just going to post your email address as well. That would be fabulous. And what was the name of the book, Stu? Disability Rights Handbook, is that right?
Yeah, so if you go to Disability Rights UK, .co.uk or .org.uk, then you, as I say, they've got some great guides on PIP. There's a free one on PIP on there. There are some very affordable guides on there for people. They're usually around the £7 to £10 mark, which will teach you how to write an appeal, how to deal with those kind of things. And if you want, you can buy the big chunky book as well. They produce it every year, and if you buy the big chunky book, you also get the online access as well, so you can see all of the detail. The difficulty with the big book is it is hard work to read, so some of those smaller guides can be really, really helpful.
You can do like Control F on PDFs as well, can't you, which is good, so you can just literally find what you need and make sure that your copy is the most up-to-date copy by Googling it and looking it up, because these things have a tendency to change. So as soon as they're printed, there might be something that's slightly incorrect.
Yeah. things change all the time. If you do buy it now, because they have the online version is continually updated. So whenever you go to it, it's the most up-to-date version, but you also get the hard copy book as well if you want. That runs to around about £40-50. So I think it's about 45 something. So like I say, that's a bit more expensive, but the smaller guides that they have on there are really cheap, and just the news and updates and everything. It's not just about benefits on there, it's also about rights, accessibility, all those kind of things. So I highly recommend the website. It's very good, and it's pretty much free to access most of the information, and as I say, a couple of those guides are free to download as well.
Okay, Drew has said, Stu, you mentioned notional income in your last video. Do you just come off ESA, i.e. not PIP HB, and live on money in the bank account until it is used? What is the procedure?
Right, so notional income is something that you would calculate for yourself, or the DWP don't really calculate it for you, but they tell you what they would sort of expect the calculation to be, and the notional income is different depending on the benefit. Not much different, but it's something like for every £100 you've got in the bank, you pay yourself £1 a week. So if you're over £16,000 for certain, or if you're over £6,000, then you will see your universal credit housing benefit or whatever reduced until it gets to 16,000, and then it will absolutely stop. After that point, over 16,000, I think it's basically £1 for every £100 you have over it. You pay yourself as a notional income each week. The idea is if you've got, say you sold a house that was 150,000, and after all the costs you've got 140,000 of that, you would then work out a notional income for that to a ceiling level. So you couldn't pay yourself like £2,000 a week out of it. That would be considered deprivation of assets, but you would pay yourself a notional income that would be equivalent to what you would receive in terms of housing benefit, council tax support, or universal credit. So if you then, and what I advised somebody to do the other day, if you then work out what that notional income is, then if you've got, say, more than one bank account, then you would ideally set up a standing order to transfer that notional income so that you can evidence that notional income and that you are living off that, and that's what your income is. And that way, when it comes down and it drops under that 16,000 again, you could then reapply for housing benefit, council tax support, PIP, universal credit at that time. So it's a bit of a pain in the bum. The other thing is when you've got savings of that amount, you can spend that on things that would be normal things through the course of living. So if your TV broke, then you would get a new TV, and that would be fine. But if you were to think to yourself, right, well, I'll go out and buy this super £5,000 4K 10K $1 billion HD thing, then they'd be like, well, is that necessary? Could that be deprivation of assets? So you have to think very carefully about what it is you're purchasing, whether it's needed for daily living, whether it's needed for your disability, if you can evidence that. So anything that you buy that is a very large purchase, so if you need to buy a new car because you drive, then yeah, buy yourself, if that's a second-hand car, or it's a HP plan where you're paying a monthly rate that's not extortionate and you've got a reasonable car, particularly if it's something for your disabilities, then that's fine. But if you go buying yourself a Ferrari, then that's not. So it's that sort of thing. Well, it is fine if you want to buy yourself a Ferrari. You just can't then go back and claim universal credit, because they'll say, well, sorry mate, sell your Ferrari and then you live off that. So definitely don't buy a car, because they depreciate, a Ferrari car anyway. But you have to be very careful of deprivation of assets, is what I'm saying. You can spend, but it has to be sensible.
Is it okay for me to put your email address on the chat? The
So it's
Hotmail one, stu.mcgoo.
Not the Hotmail
No.
one. So it's stu.mcgoo.info@gmail.com. Okay, so that's my
At gmail.com. stu.mcgoo.info@gmail.com.
yeah. So I can't say that I reply to emails immediately. I will do my best to try and reply to them when I have chance. It's actually, there's just going on with that thing, and somebody asked me the other day, well, what if I left money in an inheritance and then I decide to buy a house with that? That would be a sensible thing, essentially. And again, it's sort of the same thing where, do you need that house? Will buying that house mean that you're living without a mortgage and therefore don't need housing benefit anymore? Then that might be seen as a good thing, and they kind of go, yeah, all right, that's fair enough. But if you go using an inheritance to buy a house and you've got a mortgage, then that wouldn't be a sensible move. So it's a little bit more grey area around buying a house with an inheritance when you were previously receiving universal credit, housing benefit, whatever, and then try to claim it back. So you would have to be very careful around that sort of purchase. So the more money it is, the more careful you have to be.
Okay, I just wanted to say that Edward Brown has been putting up some really excellent tips, so please do read through the chat for tips about resources that you can get your hands on, and there are special discounts as well, so thank you for that. Edward has also asked a question. If someone has enhanced mobility with PIP and decides to get a Motability vehicle, how can you stop that going against you in a future review or assessment?
If you could just ask that question again.
Sure.
I'm just going to tweak your mic down a little bit.
Oh, sorry, am I very loud? It's because my face is so close to the microphone.
Yes.
I'm very close to the microphone. Okay, take 2. Away from the microphone.
Yes.
If someone has enhanced mobility with PIP and decides to get a Motability vehicle, how can you stop that going against you in a future review or assessment?
Going against you? I don't think it goes against you. The Motability scheme, if you're getting the enhanced rate, so the higher rate, if you're getting the higher rate, then that shouldn't go against you at all. The difficulty is obviously if you're going to go into the Motability scheme, is to have a look at what points you've been awarded and think about it. Because if you're just on the edge with those points and then they were to turn around and say, well, actually we think you can walk better than you can now, your foot's grown back, or whatever, then they could take the car away from, or rather you would lose your entitlement to the scheme, and then Motability would want the car to come back. Motability are pretty good in that they try and be as flexible as possible with people about things, and quite often they will keep it going until at least a mandatory reconsideration is done, but they do that on a case-by-case basis, and it's not a hard and fast rule that they will just let you keep it until the appeal goes through. So quite often people will do that, but if that happens and you're successful in your appeal, you can go back to the Motability scheme and they will give you a new car. Just be aware, when you have the Motability, it does mean that you lose that amount of money from your payment. So whatever your Motability element is, that's the cost every month of the car, essentially. But that's still good.
Lovely.
For a lot of people. You can also get a mobility scooter, but it shouldn't count against you in any way.
ADP, this is from Heligany. Sorry if I've got any pronunciation wrong. Bless you. ADP are telling me that I need to have a diagnosis from mental health professional to get my agoraphobia accepted as a barrier going outside. Is that true? So would someone with agoraphobia
Yes.
need to have it diagnosed? You would, wouldn't you?
You would,
Yeah.
yeah. So, well, it's not so much about having it diagnosed, or that is a part of it. It's about having a being able to evidence it.
Yeah.
So that's the key thing. It's all about evidence. If you are able to, doing things like writing a daily diary and things like that, that can be helpful, but that tended to be more helpful under disability living allowance. That on its own won't be enough, because they're still taking your word for it, and they don't want to do that. They want it to be evidenced in some way. So quite often a person might be signed off work with anxiety and depression. Well, part of that is agoraphobia, in that they don't like leaving the house, and if they do leave the house they experience severe distress or whatever, but that might not be actually written down in that sort of thing. It is worth having a chat with your GP about that, first of all, because it may well be that that is written somewhere on your medical records. You're just not aware of it. Very recently, I think it was last year,
You requested all of yours.
Yeah, I did a data protection request to my GP, and I got my records, and I found out I had things wrong with me I didn't even know about. So, and they've been there
What
since.
a gift that was.
Yes. But within there were letters that went back and forth between health professionals and my GP that I didn't even know existed, which I've then been able to use as evidence in my PIP review and things like that. So it's really worth doing that. Also, if you are getting any support with that from other people, then getting them to write a statement. So they don't even necessarily have to be a professional, but it has to be somebody. If they're not a family member, it helps.
Heligani has just said, my GP has told them I have agoraphobia and I'm housebound, but they don't seem to be seeing that as proof. Was that written?
Yeah.
That's what we need to know.
I would ask to see exactly what it was that your GP did. So if you got a copy of that letter and that shows that, the trouble is a GP might say this person suffers with agoraphobia, but because they haven't used the specific phrase that you suffer with such debilitating distress that you can't even leave the house or something like that, then they will say, well, that could just mean that sometimes you get nervous, not all the time.
Or it could simply be that it hasn't been used on a letter-headed document, and the GP hasn't put their GMC number, so they are unsure whether that's a reputable source. So it would need to be sort of an official document, be that an email which has the business address of the GP surgery and potentially the doctor's GMC number on it as well. I think that would be the way forward with that.
Certainly. I would also, like I say, consider doing that data protection request, because if your GP's had to send that information in, then that should come to you through the data protection request, or if it was a conversation that they had on the phone with somebody that phoned up, or maybe a receptionist or someone like that had on their behalf. Any of that should be recorded in your notes in some way, shape or form. But what I would do is try and have a chat with your GP, make an appointment. A telephone appointment is usually fine for this sort of thing. If your surgery just does telephone appointments, just to say what it is. GPs do get irritated with this, but they're more irritated with the DWP over it than they are with you ordinarily. So it's worth doing that. And like I say, it might come up that that's written down somewhere, or there's an actual assessment that's done with a lot more detail. So just keep digging, and don't accept it. I've seen them say, "Well, no," many times, and don't accept it.
Okay, so the shed occupant, love that's great. Karen, when I change to pension, i.e. old age, will my daughter carers stop? So I think that might be daughter's carers allowance, but I'm not sure whether that's carers allowance for Karen or whether her daughter is the carer.
So if you're receiving carers allowance, the person that you are supporting has to be in receipt of a disability benefit. So that could be personal independence payment, could be children's DLA, or if they're of pensionable age, attendance allowance. Now I'm guessing as you're not yet at pensionable age, you'll be receiving personal independence payment. So that's what it's based on. It's not based on your income, it's based on their income and whether or not you're receiving that benefit. So if you're receiving PIP and you then get state pension, that's fine. Their carer's allowance will continue. However, if their income changes, then that might affect the amount that they receive in carer's allowance. Does that make sense? Was that clear enough?
Yes,
Do you think?
I think so. Sarah Brown, hello. I think
Sarah.
we have spoken about this one before, and I think that Edward actually gave some good insight here. But this is a really good question for everyone else here as well. Why do assessors ask you if you have pets? Sarah was asked this when she had her PIP assessment. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
Because I think we said that you could choose not to disclose. Is that correct?
You can choose not to disclose, but if you are talking about pets and it's during a disability assessment, then what I would do is try and front load your answer. So rather than saying, yes, I've got a dog, and they said, you walk him every day, and you go, yes, I walk him every day. Don't say that. Say, well, it's such a struggle because I have a dog and I try to walk him, but it is really difficult for me to do so. So I have help with that and and talk so quickly they can't get a word in when you say it.
It's the truth, yeah.
Because it's probably true, and also they will try and ignore the variability. They're always ignoring the variability of a disability or health condition. That some days you can do it and some days you can't. But yes, I've seen this hundreds of times.
And some days our pets are the only things that keep us sane, actually.
Exactly. So I've seen it hundreds of times, particularly with dogs, where that's used to prove that, in inverted commas.
Look after.
Sorry?
You can look after a being, so...
to prove that somebody doesn't have a mobility issue in some way, shape or form. So... try and front load your answers if it's asked to you during an assessment, and be prepared. Always be prepared for the mandatory reconsideration and appeal. Just see them as a part of the process. Do not assume that after you've had that telephone call, even I've seen people who literally have no legs be told that they don't qualify for mobility. So just assume that you're going to have to fight the long fight with that. And if you get the pets question, you could say, well, I'm not going to disclose that. But by saying I'm not going to disclose that, that kind of indicates that you do have a pet and you don't want to disclose it because you think they'll hold it against you. So they'll make that assumption that you
I like
probably
holding my pets against me. They're so furry and soft.
Hold your pets against
I don't want
you.
anyone else to hold my pets against me, though.
Well, yes. But yeah.
So we still have a number of questions. I apologise, Stu. Kilua says, I have schizophrenia and autism spectrum disorder. So do you think I would be entitled to PIP next time it's time to renew my claim?
To renew, well, if you're already receiving PIP and these weren't conditions that were put on your original application, they're conditions that have either developed or been diagnosed since then, maybe you had the condition before and it's just been diagnosed, then as I say, it's not the conditions that guarantee whether you get PIP or not. It's how those conditions affect you, how you communicate that to them, and how you can evidence it. So if you look at my FAQ videos, I think it's either the first or the second FAQ video, I go into a lot more detail on specific conditions. No one specific condition guarantees you getting PIP, but how that condition affects you on a day-to-day basis. And if you are again, it's putting that across in the right way, because a person with schizophrenia who is compliant with their medication might get to a period where they're balanced, and that might make it seem as if they're not having any issues with that, but you could get poorly, you might get the flu and forget to take your medication, you might have difficulty with compliance with that, and you have up and down days and stuff like that. So if you have those kind of conditions, if you are getting any support with secondary care in the NHS or have had in the past, then get as much evidence as you can to support how that condition affects you. And again, get statements from people who know you and look after you and support you as well. Get written statements from them if at all possible. With a renewals are a little bit easier these days. Again, they take, like I say, about 18 months at the moment. But if you are trying to increase your points because you've developed further conditions and they're having a bigger impact on you, then you must put in a lot more detail about those things. But if your conditions are the same, then fill the questions in the thing. You've got a smaller box, you can put that my conditions are the same and are continuing and affect me in the same way every day in that box, and make sure you write something in that box. Don't just leave it blank. But yes.
Carla has asked, when is everyone getting moved to universal credit?
We covered this one a little bit earlier, but the migration is between now and the end date is 2029. The majority of people are on employment support allowance will be moved between could happen at any time between now and 2028, but will mostly be concentrating on 2027 to 2028, and that will depend on whether they have ESA and housing benefit, ESA and council tax support and housing benefit, all those kind of things. Equally, working tax credits, that's happening. So between now and January 2029, February 2029, everybody should have moved over. So just if you're, whatever applies to you, if you're on that, you will get moved.
So Katie has only got a standard rate PIP for the third time lucky. It's too late for her to appeal. Does she have to reapply if her condition has worsened? She has MS and mental health issues. So if you do worsen since your
if you worsen, you can definitely reapply. If things get worse, you can definitely reapply. But I would maybe you missed the conversation that we were having earlier. But something that Edward said, which is important to remember, is that although you have this window of a short period with requesting a mandatory reconsideration, that also applies with the actual applying to the courts for the appeal. So if you're outside of that window and there's a good reason why you didn't appeal, and it's within 13 months, 12 months to be safe, and you write to them and say, can you do that, then actually if there's a really good reason, like you were very poorly or you were in hospital or whatever, then it may well be that they'll agree to hear that appeal. So don't assume that it's a no at this point. If your conditions have worsened, then you should definitely reapply. And what I would say is absolutely make sure you've got someone on side to support you with that. Go down the CAB. If you've got MS, get in touch with the MS Society. Whoever it is, see if you can find support local to you, somebody to support you with that all the way through to appeal.
I've literally just typed exactly the same thing to someone who's got such extreme anxiety and has no one to help them. So I've said Google local support, Google the CAB. It's honestly, there will be people, don't post your locations here on the chat, but there will be people who will be close by to you, who will have seen this before. You're not alone. This happens regularly. A lot of people are, I know it doesn't help you how you're feeling at the moment, but a lot of people are in the same boat, and there is support out there for you. Please don't feel like you're alone.
But the sooner, if you're looking at reapplying for PIP and you're doing that as a first time apply kind of thing, a new application, if you're doing it as a new application, then seek out that support before you put in the request for the application, because there will be waiting lists. People who, like me, were working maybe as a volunteer, maybe employed in all these things. The government just cut all the money to those services, so there are fewer and fewer people out there doing that professionally, but the waiting lists are higher, but they are out there, and you've just got to dig. Also, look on your local authority website. They tend to have information about local services like that. Always worth checking there.
Lovely. Okie dokie. Just very quickly, because Edward Brown has been super helpful, I'm going to just chuck his question, his statement in very quickly for your comment. Assessors are asking people, do they attend places of worship? Do you have to respond to that? Thoughts?
Religion's a protected characteristic. So a person attending a place of worship essentially they don't really have to tell them about that. But again, this is something where, for example, somebody who might be Muslim might have to, attend a mosque sort of more frequently than maybe a Christian might attend church. So not that there aren't many people who are Christian that attend regularly. And again, if you are going to tell them about that, tell them about the support that you need to do so and those kind of things. In the Muslim faith, there, as people develop a disability or get older or those kind of things, then a lot of, it's part of the religion. Like it's in the Quran. You can not that I know a great deal about it, so I'm happy to be corrected. But as you develop something, just the fact that you've made an effort and gone along there is enough. You don't have to get down on your knees and do the sort of prayer ritual in the same way. You could be sat on a chair, those kind of things.
Adjustments.
That's kind of part of it. So it's just making sure that is communicated, or what support that you get. But essentially, it's a protected characteristic. So people shouldn't have to communicate that. It's up to you. But and equally, if you were to not communicate that and they then use that against you, that would be very easy to use in your favour when it came to an appeal.
So Ephesus D has said, hi, can one claim carer's allowance and ESA? Does the carer's allowance mean that the person's ESA or PIP benefit that you're caring for will be docked?
So read that again, sorry, because my brain's slowing down. I think we're going to have to wrap up fairly soon, because we've been going for quite a while and I'm starting to get tired.
Can one claim carer's allowance and ESA in tandem? Does the carer's allowance mean that the person's ESA / PIP benefit that you're caring for will be docked?
Carer's allowance and employment support allowance are both seen as income benefits. So you could have carer's allowance entitlement but not receive the carer's allowance because you're already receiving employment support allowance, and that gives you the amount that you have. So a person might be not fit to work, but also caring for somebody. We quite often see a couple living together might both be each other's carer and things like that. So there's also relative points relating to that towards the severe disability premium as well. So if you are receiving the severe disability premium and then somebody starts caring for you, you should, and is receiving carer's allowance for that, then you should inform the DWP that that's happening, because they then may take away the severe disability, or they should take away the severe disability premium. If you don't, and then they find out about it later, then you've got to pay it back. So it is very complicated. Again, that is the sort of thing that you would need to have your individual case reviewed. But essentially, yes, if you have an income from ESA, that would supersede the income from carer's allowance, so you'd have that carer's entitlement, but you wouldn't receive the amount.
If someone was looking to work part-time when the benefits go up in April, How much are they allowed to make? Oh, I think we've looked at that, haven't we? How much you're allowed to make per week or per hour? I'm pretty sure we already looked at that earlier on.
Is this under universal credit or carers allowance?
With carers allowance.
Yeah, so I need to, if I can just pinch the mouse for a sec, I'll see if I can find the exact figure quite quickly. If I can open up a thing on the screen.
Just whilst you're sort of searching, I've seen a question here about the DWP in people's bank accounts. Stu has done quite a lot of information on that in a few videos, and it's a tricky one. I think that's going to be a topic that you'd need to watch one of Stu's videos about. You have done a whole video regarding that, haven't you?
Which topic? Sorry.
The DWP looking into people's bank accounts.
Yeah. So my recent update video was on that. Really, there's not a great deal to say about it. Do look at that video because there's a couple of petitions on there which can be signed. So yeah, you can take the mouse back if you want for a sec because I couldn't get that
I've
to
lost
come
the
up.
chat actually. Completely lost the chat.
Drop to the bottom.
Yeah.
Got it?
Is it the live?
It's the Chrome.
Chrome. Lovely, thank you. What you should say to me then, it's the circle with the 3 colours.
The Chrome icon. You know what Chrome is.
I do. Does the government want to limit universal credit if you have PIP?
There's no official plans to do so yet.
Okay.
What they want to do and what they are going to do, I'm not sure. They're the same.
And Leo asks, how often do they reassess you when you're in the LCWA group?
Hang on. So if they're in the LCW group, then the length of time is usually 1 year, 3 year, 5 year. It's very similar to PIP. It could be 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year. Those tend to be the things, and it entirely depends on you, your conditions, whether you're expected to recover, all of those. That's if you're in the LCW group. If you're in the support group, generally speaking, people are put into the support group are in the support group for a much longer period of time. No one's ever necessarily indefinitely in there unless they're told that they're indefinitely in there. Sometimes they're told, sometimes they're not. They're very vague about it when you're on universal credit, whereas they were a bit more direct as to what was happening with you when people were under ESA and they were in the support group. So because you put LCWA, I'm guessing that you missed out the R.
Sorry.
No, not you. Maybe when it was typed. So
I've missed out quite a few letters in the chat today.
You all have.
I almost
it's a
called
long
John
day.
Hugs.
John Hugs. That's
I think
nice.
it's quite nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a question that I saw which hasn't appeared in here, and I think just to run this past you. It was someone who is on benefits and has been for 10 years, but they feel like they've got a bit of strength up and they really want to be working and they'd like to get into something and go into training of some kind of trade, but they are absolutely terrified that they're going to fail at this trade that they're going to try and they're going to lose everything that they've got. So it's kind of almost putting them off wanting to get back into work. What do you think about that?
Well, I think ultimately this is the big problem with the way the benefit system is set up since 2010, universal credit, all of that, ESA, all of that. The idea is that for those who want to get back into work and be supported to do that, should be able to do that without any fear. But unfortunately you can't. There's no easy answer to that. The Access to Work scheme, there's a lot of bad reports about how people are being assessed, and essentially you can't really apply for it until you've been given employment. Also doing training and things like that, particularly if you're in the limited capability for work group or the work-related activity group, if it's under ESA, whichever it is, and you start talking to them about that, then when that comes up at your next assessment, then they will be looking at that. Often people have, PIP is supposed to be something that's paid to people whether they're in work or out of work, and yet I've seen many times where people, the work that they do is used against them in those things. So I'm not saying don't be scared, and I'm not saying be scared. I'm saying it's different for everybody, but the whole point of the system is it should help people who can and want to get back into work, and not put pressure on people who can't get back into work because of their health or disability or whatever. And it does the exact opposite of both of those things. So yeah, there's no real answer to that, unfortunately. If you have support, if you can find support with doing that, if you can find some sort of scheme local to you, and it's rare because a lot of them were stopped, but where it's supporting people who have disabilities to get back into work, or health conditions to get back into work, there might be something set up by your local authority. Now, the government have promised as part of their autumn statement that they are going to give a huge amount of funding towards schemes that will help people do that, but we've not seen a great deal of action on that front at the moment. There are details about what those schemes are, and again, if you look at Disability Rights UK, they have a lot more information about how that's going to work for people, and what those schemes specifically are. But yeah, it's not amazing support at the moment.
I have just 2 more questions. Are you able to squeeze them in?
2 more, and then
Thank
I think we'll have to
you.
draw to a close.
I think I can help, Caroline. Does ESA ADP contact, give your brain a little rest, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. Does ESA ADP contact the doctor's surgery to verify information written on benefit forms? I think that the chances are that they might. But I wouldn't say yes, they do 100% of the time. So make sure that it is obviously always truthful and assume that they could. In reality, they wouldn't have the manpower to check absolutely everything.
They're supposed to.
Yeah.
They're supposed to request your medical records under PIP. They don't request medical records. It's interesting, isn't it? They're supposed to collect medical records, and they kind of do and don't as and when they feel. But your bank accounts, oh yeah, they want to have a look at them. That's just my opinion anyway. So, like I say, they should be requesting those things from your GP. And this is one of the things that causes long delays with PIP. GPs might miss that information. It might go through to reception. They might not be able to answer the questions that they're asking. It tends to be a fairly stock form that they send out with just a couple of tick boxes on it. If they need extra detail, they might make a phone call. They might be waiting for somebody to phone them back, and so on. So, and for a lot of people, they don't. So what I always say to everybody is collect the evidence yourself and send it to them yourself. Like I say, do a data protection request at your GP surgery. Be specific and tell them what you want to do. Some GP surgeries aren't that great with data protection requests, and you have to go back and forth with them over it a bit.
Sometimes you can ask for your own details and they won't release it because it's data protected. This is crazy. It's bananas. But
yes, so you do get that. So if you find a receptionist who maybe doesn't understand how the data GDPR 2021 works, then maybe get in touch with the practice manager or something like that, or just speak to your GP, but collect up as much evidence as you can and send that off with the initial application.
One more question.
One more
question, like a band. Nick Thompson, and I'm sorry if I have missed anyone. It is gone completely bananas. It's been great. Nick Thompson, hi. My sister needs to go on to ESA and is disabled, can't work at the moment. There's no direct route on the new universal credit to do this. As you apply, it makes you do a job diary. Can you advise how to get onto it? Would there be a local provision that would be able to talk that through? Because I feel like that's got to be a sort of a show and tell thing.
I'm going to do this again because my
Yeah.
brain is really starting to slow down. Can you repeat the question?
Of course. So Nick's sister needs to go on to ESA and is disabled and can't work at the moment. There's no direct route on the new universal credit to do this. As you apply, it makes you do a job diary.
Yes.
Can you advise how to get onto it?
So yeah, when you first apply for universal credit, you you do all of the things and go with the flow, and then at some point you will be assigned a work coach, and you will tell them that you're not well enough. You can also use the universal credit diary thing. I can't remember the bloody name. Journal, thank you. So you can use the universal credit journal to communicate with them and tell them that you're not well enough to work and those kind of things. So use that to communicate that with them. And then when you sit down with your work coach, they will then put you towards the out of work sickness element, which previously we called ESA. And then you will be eventually sent a UC50 form, which you will need to fill in, and I've still not done how to fill one of those in video, which I really need to get on with. And then you'll have the assessment after that. But yeah, do communicate that with them through your online journal. Just go through, fill in the form as if you are out of work and looking for work, but don't say you are looking for work. Just go through the form and fill it in as it is, and then it's after that fact that you're telling them what situation you're in currently.
Right, time for you to say goodnight.
Yes.
Thank you so much, everyone. I have put a thank you on the chat to everyone. Honestly, it's been an absolute delight tonight. People have been super helpful. You are also a huge support to us, so we hope that we are a support to you. We love your feedback. We love your comments. Great session tonight, guys.
Yes.
Onwards and upwards.
Yes, thank you.
You're not alone.
Thank you to everybody. People like Edward Brown and those kind of guys who are helping each other out and who've got some sort of background in this. They help me out as well. Edward helps me out because he's like, well, what about this? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good point. John Hughes as well. Guys like that.
John Hugs, according
John
to my
Hugs.
yeah.
To John Hugs.
My typing. Sorry.
Those kind of guys. It's helping us to develop. It's helping me to stay on track and things. And hopefully we will improve over. Not that there's anything wrong with what we're saying necessarily, but we will improve these things over the next few months. So to anyone who's new, who's joined, thank you for joining. If I haven't been able to answer your question in the detail that I would like, do have a look through my other videos on the channel. There might be some things on there that will be helpful to you. So if you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe. And look out also for those polls, opinion polls that I'm going to be posting over the next few weeks and so. Not sure when I'm going to do that exactly, but when they pop up, please do give us your feedback and those kind of things. It's all really appreciated, and thank you for coming in this evening and seeing us, all of you. You're all amazing. And if you are going through a hard time at the moment, just remember, keep going. The alternative is worse. And whatever you're going through, it will change. It will change eventually. So yes, thank you all, and I'm going to do the little transition-y thing so we can go to the end screen. So just bear with me a sec if you were in the middle of typing.
That's all right.
Hopefully that will disappear, and I'll do the transition. I will see you all very soon. Thank you very much, and thank you to Becky and also to Duke of Nuke as well for support.